and has been allegedly using that money to fund terrorism.
And time for a quick break now. More news and updates on the other side.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. We've got an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top headlines we're tracking currently. As part of Delhi's diplomatic outreach, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar will start a 6-day visit to the Netherlands, Denmark and Germany, during which he is expected to highlight Pakistan's support to cross-border terrorism. India and the European Union chief negotiators have concluded another round of talks on the proposed free trade agreement and agreed to reach a deal in 2 phases. Our Foreign Secretary is to brief the parliamentary panel on Operation Sindoor today. The briefing comes just ahead of India's global outreach against terror. Israel began an extensive new ground offensive in Gaza, even as negotiators resumed indirect ceasefire talks. Moody's became the latest major credit rating agency to downgrade the United States, citing ballooning government debt that could grow further if Republicans pass a package to extend Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts. Our big focus, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar is embarking on a 6-day visit of the Netherlands, Denmark and Germany beginning today, during which he is actually expected to highlight Pakistan's relentless support for cross-border terrorism. You must note that this is Dr. Jaishankar's first foreign visit after recent military confrontation between Indian and Pakistani armed forces, and the Ministry of External Affairs has said that Dr. Jaishankar will meet the leadership of the 3 countries and hold discussions with his counterparts on the entire gamut of bilateral relations, regional and global matters of mutual interest. This is a very significant trip for our External Affairs Minister, as it's his first trip after Operation Sindoor. He's embarking on a 6-day visit of the Netherlands, Denmark and Germany beginning today. His plan of action is to highlight Pakistan's relentless support for cross-border terrorism. And also, the MEA has categorically said that our External Affairs Minister will meet the leadership of the 3 countries and hold significant discussions with his counterparts on bilateral relations, regional and global matters of mutual interest. So this is part of Delhi's diplomatic outreach, as Dr. Jaishankar will be touching down in the Netherlands, Denmark and Germany. Meanwhile, India and the European Union have conducted the 11th round of negotiations on their proposed free trade agreement. Those negotiations have now concluded, and they've reportedly agreed to pursue a two-stage approach to finalize the deal. Now, this comes amid rising global trade uncertainties, particularly in the light of US tariff policies under Donald Trump. And in response, both sides have opted for a phased strategy, as I mentioned, similar to India's previous trade pacts with Australia and also ongoing discussions with the United States. Negotiators focused on key areas such as market access for goods, services, investment. In fact, the EU has also sought significant tariff reductions on products including automobiles, medical devices, wines, spirits, meat, poultry, as well as stronger intellectual property protections. With that, I must also brief you about the other big story we're tracking. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri will brief a parliamentary committee today on the India-Pakistan military conflict that happened in the aftermath of that deadly Pahalgam terror attack. The meeting comes against the backdrop of the Indian Armed Forces carrying out Operation Sindoor to avenge the Pahalgam attack and the subsequent military actions between the two countries. So Mr. Misri will brief the panel chaired by Congress member Shashi Tharoor on the current foreign policy developments regarding India and Pakistan today, as in Monday, and on Tuesday as well. And with that, let's turn our attention now to the IMF tightening the bailout terms for Pakistan. Well, the International Monetary Fund has imposed 11 new conditions on Pakistan for the release of the next tranche of its bailout package, taking the total to 50. So the global lender has also flagged heightened tensions with India as risk to the fiscal external and reform goals of the program, as per several reports. So the fresh conditions include parliamentary approval of a record 17.6 trillion rupees federal budget, a higher debt servicing surcharge on electricity bills, and removal of restrictions on importing used cars older than 3 years. The IMF staff-level report, which was released over the weekend on Saturday, explicitly warned that rising tensions between India and Pakistan, if sustained or deteriorate further, could heighten risks to the fiscal, external, and reform goals of this current program. And with that, let's turn to news of Pakistan drumming up international support now. Well, as per PTI, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar will travel to China today, where he is expected to hold bilateral talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Ishaq Dar will also be meeting Afghanistan's acting Foreign Minister Ami Khan Muttaqi, who will be arriving in China on Tuesday. This is what PTI highlights. But according to a report by local Geo News, the three leaders will attend a trilateral meeting. This would be the first foreign trip that the Pakistani Foreign Minister will take since India's Operation Sindoor, targeting terror infrastructure in POK and other areas within Pakistan, as we have extensively covered. And with that, let's get you an update from the United States now, where former US President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer, according to a statement from his personal office. In fact, we are told that doctors diagnosed Joe Biden last week with a prostate nodule after he experienced increasing urinary symptoms. But by Friday, they diagnosed him with cancer. Biden's news seemed to, for at least a short time, break through Washington's current fierce divides. And among those quickly offering immediate support was his immediate predecessor and successor in the White House. So Donald Trump on Truth Social, which is a social media platform, said, "Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. The diagnosis revelation, though, came as Democrats were publicly grappling with new questions about Joe Biden's mental acuity throughout the last 2 years of his presidency, as we had covered on NDTV as well." Listen into the further details.
Former President Joe Biden was diagnosed Friday with prostate cancer. It's an aggressive form of cancer that has spread to his bones. His office made the announcement on Sunday. Now, prostate cancer is measured on something known as a Gleason scale. That looks on a scale of 1 to 10 at how a cancerous cell compares to a normal cell. Biden registered at a 9. Still, his office says that the cancer is likely hormone sensitive and can be treated. Statements for recovery came from President Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, who was Biden's vice president and succeeded him as the Democratic nominee in the 2024 election. Now, Biden, while he was president, made treating cancer one of his priorities. In 2022, he created the Cancer Moonshot. His goal was to have cancer deaths in 25 years. What inspired him to create this project was his own loss. In 2015, his son, Beau, died from brain cancer.
Well, in further crucial updates from the United States, I must inform you that Donald Trump has said that he will speak to Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky to end the bloodbath between their two countries after the Russian president skipped peace talks he had initiated with his Ukrainian counterpart. But Trump over the weekend on Saturday said in a post on his Truth Social platform that the call with Putin would cover subjects including, and I quote, stopping the bloodbath that is killing on average more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade. He will then speak to Zelensky as well as various members of NATO is what he's added. But the statement came after Putin refused to meet Zelensky in Turkey, despite proposing the meetings himself, as the Russian leader continued to refuse to engage on terms that were set by others. Putin sent a low-level delegation instead, as we had informed you, led by his former culture minister, Vladimir Medinsky. But for further clarity on what to expect, joining us live from Washington, D.C., senior journalist Ray Locker. Always a pleasure, Ray, to have you on our show. Realistically, can one-on-one calls by the U.S. president meaningfully alter the war's trajectory, though, Ray? Or is the broader coalition still essential to any durable ceasefire? What's your take?
You got to have a lot of people working together on this. One-on-one call between President Trump and Vladimir Putin probably won't get it done. They've talked before and nothing has really happened. Right. And we've seen the Trump administration change repeatedly over the 120 days they've been in office, where they've been putting the pressure on Ukraine, then on Russia, kind of throwing up their hands in frustration at Russia's intransigence. And now we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the Russians barely showed up in Turkey. And so, I'm not optimistic, but, maybe something could happen this time.
Russians barely showed up in Turkey. Putin proposed the Istanbul talks, then skipped them. So, Ray, how do seasoned observers read his refusal to engage directly, even as Trump enters the scene?
Well, they don't think he's serious about having a peace deal. Every time there's talk about doing something, there's talk about talks, maybe some kind of low-level negotiation. The next thing you know, a bunch of Russian drones or missiles show up, in parts of Ukraine and kill a bunch of people. And it happens over and over and over again. We saw a few weeks ago, Trump tweeted out or put on Truth Social, Vlad, stop, and nothing stopped. So, it's over and over again. We keep seeing it, and you wonder, how many times do people need to be fooled about this before something changes?
But as we speak, Donald Trump still says that there can't be a peace deal without him. So would you argue that the White House is now personalizing the Ukraine peace process under Trump's brand of diplomacy?
Oh, absolutely. I remember, when he was running for president and in the run-up to the inauguration, he said he was going to have a deal in one day. Absolutely. Well, it hasn't been one day. And he said, oh, that was an exaggeration, whatever. No one really knows what he means. No one knows where he stands, because he constantly changes his mind, as we've seen with tariffs and so many other things. So it's really hard to get a read on it. It's got to be tremendously frustrating for the Ukrainians.
Ray, as we wrap, what are some risks and possible rewards of Donald Trump negotiating directly with two wartime leaders without a multilateral framework in place? Well,
I mean, he needs the support of other powers in this. He needs the EU to weigh in. If he tries to cut some unilateral deal with Russia and the European Union doesn't go along with it, how viable is that? And then that weakens everything else if he reaches a one-on-one deal with the Russians that Ukraine hasn't bought into. So he needs to have everybody on board, but he hasn't really done the homework for that yet.
Ray, as always, thank you so much for joining us with your views. We really appreciate your time, and we will, of course, revert to you for regular updates. Well, this, as Ukraine on Sunday has said that Russia attacked with a record number of drones, targeting various regions, including that of the capital, Kyiv. where a woman was killed. The Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia launched 273 Shahed attack drones and various types of imitator drones, of which 88 were destroyed and 128 more went astray without negative consequences. But Ukraine's intelligence service said it believed Moscow had intended to fire an intercontinental ballistic missile later on Sunday, but there was no immediate response from Moscow to that accusation. You must also note that Pope Leo has called for unity at his inaugural Mass at the Vatican, attended by thousands of faithful and world leaders, including Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. During that address on Sunday, he criticized economic systems which he said exploited Earth's resources and marginalized the poor. He also said that he would seek to govern without ever yielding to the temptation to be an autocrat. The Pope also noted efforts to end the war in Ukraine in a prayer after the service and also held a meeting with Zelensky. Do note that the pontiff had called for an end to the war in his first days in office too. With that, let's turn our attention now to Israel. Well, Israel has said that it has decided to resume the entry of basic quantity of food into Gaza. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu's office has said. On the recommendation of the IDF and based on the operational need to enable the expansion of the military operation to defeat Hamas, Israel will allow a basic quantity of food to be brought in for the population in order to make certain that no starvation crisis develops in the Gaza Strip. So this is what the Prime Minister's office has said, while the World Food Programme had warned that they're in a race against time to avoid famine in Gaza. Now's the crucial part that you need to pay attention to. The Israel military says it has begun extensive ground operations throughout northern and southern Gaza as part of a new assault on the territory. The Israeli ground forces are being supported by the country's air force as they claim to let the aid in. Slipping into a very quick commercial break, back in a moment with the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Welcome back. Well, Moody's became the latest major credit rating agency to downgrade the United States, citing ballooning government debt that could grow further if Republicans pass a package to extend Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts. The White House, though, sought to downplay Moody's assessment, with the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Sunday describing the rating as a lagging indicator of the country's economic health. The grand old party's proposed budget package, though, which could add trillions to the federal deficit, according to estimates, suffered a blow on Friday as party hardliners stopped the bill from moving forward, arguing it would add too much to the debt. Another push to advance the package was also expected later on Sunday. And with that, let's turn our attention now to Canada, where Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that the federal government will present a budget in the autumn, days after the finance minister had said that the new Liberal government will have an economic update later in the year. But Mr. Carney's announcement after he attended Pope Leo's inauguration at the Vatican came days after Finance Minister Franco Philippe Champagne had said that the new Government will table an economic update later in the year, implying it will not present an annual budget in the near term. My colleague Maha Siddiqui, as always, has been tracking all the finer developments for you live in Vancouver. She joins us currently. Maha, as we're given to understand, Prime Minister Carney says the federal budget will come in the autumn now?
Yes, that's what he's saying, considering that the present session of Parliament, which starts on the 26th of May, is going to be a short one. It will be less than a month long. And Prime Minister Carney here is saying that that time will not be enough to pass the budget and to have a proper discussion on it. And therefore, they want to present the budget in the September session of Parliament, which is the fall session. Now, the reasons could also be because this will give the government some time, some breather to be able to come up with a budget that is comprehensive, that is pragmatic, forward-looking, and able to convince the people that Mark Carney is able to deliver or is going to deliver on the promises that he made during the campaign. But in the interim period, what Mark Carney is saying is that the tax cut for the lowest bracket of income taxpayers will be already announced, which has already been announced, rather, will be brought into effect. And the other aspect that he's highlighting is that in September, when they come out with the budget, it will be more comprehensive. Now, the reason that the opposition has been going hammer and tongs against the government over this issue is because a budget has not been tabled in Parliament for almost over 400 days, which is over a year. The last fiscal update was given by Justin Trudeau's government in December, but at that time, little attention was paid to it because that was the same time when Justin Trudeau was facing the crisis with his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. And therefore, that economic, fiscal update really, Parmeshwar, was not looking too good for Canada. But at that time, it was completely overshadowed by other political issues. So the opposition wants the government to come clean and clearly come out with what the economic status of Canada is at the moment. As we all know that for the last 1.5 years, Canada has been going through a housing crisis as well as the prices of commodities being very high. So clearly the people as well as the opposition want to know from the government what it plans for the future with regards to the economics of Canada, especially with the kind of economic pressure and onslaught that is coming in from its neighbor, the United States. Parmeshwar.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the latest details. With that, let's turn our attention now to the UK. Well, Prime Minister Keir Starmer will host the first UK-EU summit since Brexit as the Labour government attempts to reset ties with the bloc, some 9 years after the UK left the EU. The two sides, which will meet in London today, are expected to announce a defence and security pact, agreements related to trade and a joint statement on the current geopolitical situation. But do note that in its messaging, Downing Street has linked the expected trade announcements with last week's comprehensive UK-India trade deal and UK-US framework trade agreement. However, the trade outcomes for today are expected to be smaller in scope, focusing on a few sectors. With that, let's bring you a quick update from South Korea, where two leading presidential candidates, Lee Jae-myung and Kim Moon-so, have held the first of 3 televised debates as the race intensifies to replace former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was removed in April over his contentious move to declare martial law late last year. Mr. Yoon's ouster has stoked political turmoil in the nation, and a snap election is set for next month, as in the 3rd of June. But for the latest from Ground Zero, let's go across to Sanjay Kumar, journalist from the Korea Herald, joining us live from Seoul at the moment. Sanjay, if you could highlight for us from the key takeaways from Sunday's heated debate.
Yesterday's debate was very focused on the economic recession that Korea is going through right now, as well as the geopolitical dimensions under the Trump's tariff policies. So these two were the biggest challenges. The 4 candidates, all of them, they discussed about these things, but their highest priority was to address the economic recession situations, as well as how to deal with the Trump tariff policies. So the Democratic Party, Lee Jae-myung, that you have mentioned, He is leading, according to the latest real meter survey, he is having like 50.2% of kind of support. It is just an online survey, but he seemed very prepared yesterday, and actually the far right party and the New Reform Party, the two other from the uh, right wing forces. These two candidates are like Kim Mun-soo and Lee Jun-sok. So both these candidates, they were asking Lee Jae-myung about what would be the stance of Lee Jae-myung when it comes to China, when it comes to address the tariff policies. So the Lee Jae-myung, who is leading and who is considered a very heavyweight in current circumstances, and many in Korea are seeing him as next president. He is trying to say that we should not be in hurry to address the tariff policy things and those barriers which are creating some kind of uncertainty when it comes to exports. As you know, like Korea is very much centered on the export economic aspects. So that has been taken into consideration. But the Power Party, Kim Mun-soo, is trying to say that it is high time and urgently we should address this. So, for this tariff thing, Kim Mun-soo is trying to sort it out very swiftly, and he's also saying that if he is elected, he is going to use his good communication with Trump administration, and he is going to open one Korea-US summit on urgent basis. But from Lee Jae-myung, he says that we should not be in so hurry, and we should take a very calibrated approach, and we should not show that we are in hurry and we really want to settle all these things in a hasty way. He says that let's go with calculated way. But I would also like to say that this time Taiwan issue was also being brought in the debate because many in the right-wing forces, they see Lee Jae-myung as pro-China, and recently he has made also a comment called like "xie xie." That means like "thank you China," "thank you," like "thank you China." When in a hypothetical situation, if China tries to have Taiwan once again in their territory, so this is creating a lot of diplomatic
So Sanjay,
kind
we will
of
of course
debate here.
keep in touch with you for the regular updates as far as the political battleground in South Korea is concerned. Thank you so much, though, for taking us through the latest developments. We will revert you for regular updates in the run-up to the June election. With that, let's turn our attention to the other big story we're tracking. The US Food and Drug Administration has approved the first blood test to help diagnose Alzheimer's disease, a move that could make it easier to detect the condition early in some people. The test, developed by a Japanese biotech company, looks for proteins in the blood that can indicate the presence of amyloid plaques in the brain, which is a key hallmark of Alzheimer's. The blood test cannot definitively diagnose the disease, for which there is also no cure, but rather experts say the test can help screen adults aged 55 and older who are at risk of Alzheimer's, which could speed their path through diagnosis and treatment before the onset of symptoms, including severe memory loss. And finally, the Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson starrer Die My Love earned a 6-minute standing ovation following its world premiere at the ongoing 78th edition of the Cannes Film Festival. The film is competing for the Palme d'Or at Cannes 2025. Just here's a sneak peek of that 6-minute standing ovation.
L'équipe Stanfield, ils sont accompagnés de l'équipe de production Justine, Siaroki, Molly Smith, ou encore le challenge.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens.